I'm Ashton Addison from Blockwest Capital for Investment Pitch Media, and today on the Crypto Coin Show we have Bruno Maia, the Ecosystem Growth Lead of Cartesi. Bruno, welcome to the show, and it is a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me here, Ashton, today. Really a pleasure to join the show. Actually, great enthusiast for your show. Super cool interviews and very good content.
Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure to have Cartesi back on. It's been since 2021. We did have the founder back on the show for the first time, and I know so much has happened with the ecosystem in 2 years, which is like a decade in crypto. So I'd love to get some updates where Cartesi is at right now. But before we dive into that, I'd love to hear, first of all, a little bit about your background in blockchain and how that led to the ecosystem growth at Cartesi, and then we'll dive into all the details.
Absolutely, a pleasure. So actually my background, I'm engineer, I'm a telecom engineer. So in the early 2000s, I graduated from the university working in mobile networks. Starting from 2008, I started my international career in telecom as an international independent strategic consultant working for Qualcomm for almost 10 years. Travel and live in different places, including Mexico, giving support to mobile operators. And around 2016, I got to know blockchain and get super enthusiastic about the technology, and it really felt a strong push to learn and get more deep in that. And 2018, I had an opportunity to jump as a professional So I quit completely telecom, joined a company called Bit Theory as a director of pre-sales on Bitcoin mining and blockchain. They used to have a permissioned blockchain by the time, and was my first contact as a professional and really not only as an enthusiast but as a part of the ecosystem and the industry. 2020, Eric, he called me. They just launched the IEO in Binance. He was super enthusiastic, and by the time, so we're still early. Imagine 2020, we're super early. So it's very difficult to find people capable to understand technology, to talk about technology, and think strategically on how to grow the vision of Cartesi. And he asked me to join the group. I know Eric since from school times. We also was in the same university back to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And he was talking to me about the project, but when he mentioned about the people that was part of the project, then when I got excited, right? Say, Eric, stop, I'm joining. I don't need to know anymore else. The people that is inside this vision and the quality of the human capital that Cartesi has was for me the key factor to join. It's all about people, right? In the end, it's all about people. So joining that distinguished group for me was a greatest pleasure. And here I am, almost 3 years after joining Cartesi. So super excited.
Amazing. And a company really just is a group of people with a common vision. So it's good to have a great group around you working towards something great. And I want to talk about some of the updates for Cartesi. But before we do that, let's get people up to date for those who haven't seen our first interview, or for those who aren't familiar with what Cartesi does. Maybe you can give a high-level overview on just the ecosystem, and then we can dive into the details.
Thanks for asking that, Ashton. Actually, we were in this process also of self-discovery, because Cartesi is working on the front line of what blockchain is. So for us in Cartesi was a refinement through the years of what means Cartesi project and which space we are adding value and collaborate into the ecosystem. And Cartesi is what we call an execution layer, a modular execution layer, used in a very specifically design of roll-ups called application-specifically roll-ups, right? And what we really add value on top of this unique design on application-specifically roll-up is a RISC-V virtual machine that runs an entire Linux OS. So it's the first time that the blockchain ecosystem has a very refined and sophisticated VM running entire Linux. And this is, for developers, is a completely game changer on which kind of programs and how you can approach programmability in blockchain.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because most people understand, even though those who aren't deep into blockchain, that Ethereum runs on the Ethereum virtual machine, and all of these networks of computers, these world internet computers, have virtual machines that they're running. And Linux has been a part of, back in the beginning of the internet, it was like the operating system for developers. And I really haven't heard Linux at all so far in blockchain. And I'm curious, why is that? And why now is Cartesi working with it? And what makes it so great for the blockchain ecosystem?
That's also another great question. Well, indeed, Linux is present in more than 90% of devices in the world. It's a common layer for computing, right? And as you said, Ethereum is indeed a very primitive world computer, right? With a very limited computational capacity, and that is one of the bottlenecks, and that's what avoids us to really reach mainstream only using Ethereum, because it's impossible to build daily solve real problems, life's real problems with that so limited computational capacity and data storage, right? Mm-hmm. But indeed, it's a very simplified computer that has an extremely decentralized processing. And the most beautiful achievement of Ethereum is having the decentralization of the truth. Right? Whatever runs in Ethereum, it's validated by thousands of nodes, and this gives a superpower on verifiability and tamper-proof and auditability, right? So this is the greatest achievement of Ethereum, and what Cartesi did is build on top of this achievement. So we are not trying to replace Ethereum, by the opposite. We are augmenting what Ethereum achieved, giving this extra computational capacity, which Cartesi application specifically rollups gives. So you can run 1,000 more computation effort or computation cycles in a Cartesi application specific that you could run an entire Ethereum block space. That gives you possibility to build much more sophisticated program, right? And on top of that, we put this Linux that has a huge gain on programmability. You can choose your program to develop your smart contract, your dApp, right? You can use different libraries to compose with this program, file tooling, every tool that is commonly available for a developer in typical Web2 space, right? And everything that we use in a Cartesi machine has the same secure guarantees of Ethereum. So our strong foundation is still this remarkable achievement of Ethereum. And we do that using this dispute resolution of optimistic rollups. So we inherit from Ethereum or any other layer that we can integrate our technology the same security guarantees. That's why we are modular, right? We don't need to implement only on top of Ethereum. We can implement on top of Arbitrum, Optimism, and others, right? Getting this composability of different configurations depends on the requirements of the application that the developers will build.
Very interesting, and I'm glad you mentioned the modularity there. I've had a few discussions this week, and over the past few months, I've been seeing a lot about modular versus monolithic blockchains, and almost like a synonymous term to like layer 3 or other expanding layers on top of Ethereum and the other layer ones. Do you see this as something that's been worked on for a few years, it seems like, but now it's sort of coming to fruition, and that modular blockchains are going to be something that is the status quo moving forward?
It's an interesting question, because the whole ecosystem is a great still in its early days, and we are still building the infrastructure of the tomorrow's blockchain, right? So it's a huge experimental field, and what happened is Ethereum realized a while ago, and that's the advantage of Ethereum to be the first one. They face problems that other monolithic chains maybe face in 1 to 3 years, right? So they realized that it couldn't run enough computation, enough transaction, reduce cost of transactions in a scale required to get mass adoption with a world computer that validates every single thing that happens inside Ethereum, right? So they realized that the way would be concentrate in Ethereum-based layer the most important and fundamental characteristics, which is the decentralization of the truth through the consensus, right? And also increase the data storage capacity. The rest, Ethereum roadmap is relying to upper layers. Right? The problem is the upper layers that has been built on top of Ethereum so far, the architecture choice of those layers, they face similar limitations of Ethereum architecture choice, right? So they are just now unloaded because they are in the early days. But with time, they will be busy as well. So it's getting in a direction that if you really want scale computation in a level that requires to build real-world applications that touches the real-world problems beyond just the typical financial solutions that we have seen with DeFi, we need those unique architectures that are roll-ups per application, right? On top of all those layers that sits on the very foundation basis of Ethereum, right? And I believe that this modular solution will be also very interesting because each use case demands different characteristics of your blockchain. So if you have a blockchain with only one single characteristic, it's very difficult to fit efficiently all possible use cases. So different use cases will require different characteristics. The modularity gives this aspect as well, plasticity, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. And we've seen a lot of DeFi applications that are getting pretty big inside of the bubble that is the crypto ecosystem. But we've yet to see some that have reached millions and millions of users outside of Web3 for everyday people. I feel like the gaming industry could be one of those industries that helps expand Web3 into the mainstream because the market cap of gaming is far surpasses anything to do with Web3, and there's millions and millions of users. Do you think that could be one of the near-term use cases for having ecosystems like this that need extra storage, data availability, things like that?
Absolutely. A game is a very good example on how limited is the infrastructure available at this moment to build very compelling, interesting games, right? It's not just because a game in a blockchain that will succeed. A game fundamentally needs to be fun to play and get have the gameplay dynamics, right? Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And what we have been seeing so far is centralized games, adding a small layer of blockchain, mostly on compensation mechanisms or wearables or very limited usage of blockchain potential. And by the way, those wearables and everything, they are controlled and minted and have a role in the gameplay controlled by a centralized logic, which is kind of awkward, right? So having a massive gain on computation will allow you to build much more logic on-chain. On-chain meaning in one of those layers that are fully verifiable, immutable, and protected by the consensus of the blockchain, right? So in that sense, you expand a lot what can be done, right? A typical example is one of Cartesi community members, a super game developer. He got a novel chess game, but the fun part is it's not a chess game because chess itself has been developed directly, solidly in Ethereum. But this gameplay, they put robots, AI robots, to battle against each other. So there's AI robots based on Python, following a strategic. So the gamer is actually programming his robot to go to the battle. That's the fun part. So,
wow. So
this type of different novel setups on gaming, and different layers of incentives on how that can get it and how this compose with other games as well, machine-to-machine economy. So a lot of interesting things here that can be built.
Very interesting. And, some of these games are huge as well, especially these massive online games or, with incredible graphics. And I don't think it could, at the moment, we couldn't just stick it on Ethereum without the whole blockchain just breaking. So I'm excited to see how things like these roll-ups that you're talking about and the modularity help bring better, bigger stronger games into Web3. And I saw recently, it's not the biggest or the fanciest graphics game in the world, but I saw it's one of the most popular, and there's a reason. I saw a partnership with Cartesi and Doom, and it was like one of the oldest online games that it became famous. I'm curious on what's happening with that, and what can you tell me about this Doom and Cartesi?
Yeah, that was a funny one. Actually, it's not a formal partnership with the software house that created Doom. Doom is an iconic game. It's maybe the cradle of the first shooting games, right? Together with Wolfenstein. And there was a tweet from someone in the whole blockchain community challenging Ethereum, right? Saying, if Ethereum is the worldwide computer, is the internet computer, why it didn't manage to run Doom yet, right? Which is a valid question, by the way. Yeah. And one developer from our community replied, "A challenge accepted." So here is Doom running inside Cartesi virtual machine, which is basically running on top of Ethereum infrastructure, right, with the application specifically rollup. So it's the very first time that not the entire logic of Doom is composed into this virtual machine and executed, right? And that gives a kind of a flavor, teasing of what Cartesi can do. Right? You get a code from a mainstream of 30 plus years developed. You get this code to just compile for our version of Linux, and you have all the libraries, all the programming language, everything ready to execute that, right? So that shows the complexity of programming that this virtual machine that Cartesi runs can handle, right? And it's a very open invitation for experimental developers to come and do modern Web3, right?
Wow, that's very cool. I love it. And with these games, question, why doesn't it work on Ethereum and the EVM, the Ethereum virtual machine? I'm curious on how Cartesi and all of these other blockchains are building. It always ties back to the Ethereum virtual machine, which, as you said, it's very rudimentary. It can't do all these things, but we're building on top of it instead of building something new. Do you think that will be, moving forward for years to come, everyone will just continue to build on Ethereum virtual machine, and if so, why?
Basically, I would say that the internet is composable, right? And you have this choices of implementation. Is not that, as I said, Cartesi is the only one and single way to implement smart contracts on blockchain, right? So it will be a choice of different requirements of the application, right? Different economic value of this application. It's a trend that Ethereum-based layer will be much more used for settlement and storage, rather than you run directly your code there. That would be upper layers, right? So Ethereum virtual machine, it would be extraordinarily used for the years come, right? And it's a simple virtual machine for a reason, because when you have this world computer with several thousand nodes validating the same computation, you cannot have, for design choices, you cannot have a huge computation capacity. So if you cannot have a huge computation capacity, you cannot put a very sophisticated virtual machine. You have to bring a virtual machine to the most simplistic virtual machine that can allow any kind of programming to program to be created, full turning machine, right? Tuning machine. So that's what Ethereum is, and with a new program language. So Cartesi would allow people that wants to do more sophisticated things have the ability to do that. And of course, on board, millions of developers that have languages like Python, Java, right? To bring those own languages with their libraries, with their tooling, to leverage that on Ethereum ecosystem using Cartesi application, specifically rollups. It's already happening. In our hackathons, we have people building AI tools. There was an excellent developer from Australia called Diane, and she developed Chat GPT inside Cartesi. So you literally implement a larger LLM model inside Cartesi, which is pretty amazing, right?
Wow, that's very cool. And what do you think it's going to take for that influx of, we're seeing it gradually, but there's still so many Web2 developers that have been developing for the past 30 years that have yet to dip their feet into Web3. Is it the lack of the environment in the programming languages that they've learned? Or is there some other barriers to entry on why we're not already seeing, as you mentioned, these decentralized applications beyond finance, other use cases that are in industries non-financial?
Yeah, it's a good question, Ashton. There's a lot of reasons for that. Right? It's not a single specific reason, but as stated on the A16Z release every year, a very compelling report about the state of crypto, right? And they did it 2023, and the ACTO was very clear on one of the really key roadblocks to building use case beyond DeFi for blockchains is exactly the lack of computation capacity, what the industry call block space, right? So Cartesi, one of the main key attributes of our design choice is exactly to increase massively the block space or the computational capacity. So we believe freeing that computational capacity is one of the very good steps toward new use cases and more real world applications be built on top of blockchain. Aside of that, of course, there is an adoption cycle of new technologies that play around, and the fact that not every solution application that you build in the world needs a blockchain. You don't need to build verifiable, decentralized program for everything that we do in our daily life. So there will be things that are blockchainizable and others that, no, it's okay to run your AWS centralized with super high performance, with low latency, real-time response, and etc. Right? So this is where also we need to understand that blockchain will not completely replace the world of computing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good insights. And we don't have a lot of time left, Bruno, but I'm curious on the next steps of growth for the Cartesi ecosystem, towards the end of this year and moving into 2024. What are some of the major things on the roadmap?
Great. Well, yeah, we are in the full adoption mode. We are launching mainnet, and for an application specifically roll up to be launching in mainnet is a novel concept. So meaning that Cartesi will launch an application called Honeypot in the mainnet of Ethereum, and stating that our technology is ready to be used for other developers that wants to deploy mainnet, right? So and we will continue our roadmap, increasing the usability of the technology, form partnerships to extend how you can compose Cartesi technology to give more elasticity to different use cases and better fit to different use cases. We are in touch with several very important players in the ecosystem. That's why I believe the blockchain industry is much more collaborative rather than competitive, right? Because different projects are really good on building specifically blocks that will be very useful in the future. So we are in constant touch with all those players, and we are open for experimentation, welcoming all developers that wants to do more in Web3 with Cartesi using any programming language they want, and super excited with the future. Right? So we are very happy with where we are and excited with the next steps.
That is exciting. And what's the best way for the viewers to follow along with those updates and to learn more about the developer ecosystem and potentially get involved?
Oh, great. Well, they can enter in our Discord, but also follow us in our Twitter, Cartesi Project, right? Or accessing our page with all our medias is Cartesi.io, which is pretty comprehensive, clean page that can give everyone a very good insight on what is Cartesi. Also, we have our Telegram community, so we have plenty of media to every kind of individual excited with blockchain to follow us, from developers to enthusiasts.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bruno, for all the insights into just blockchain, data availability, scalability, modularity. This is something that people that are learning this, they're ahead of the curve. And you have great insights into where the industry is going. So I'm definitely going to be following up with Cartesi. I'm going to put the social links and the platform links in the description box below so the viewers can also follow up if they want to learn more. I appreciate all the time that you've taken today, and let's definitely follow up in the near future.
Oh, thanks, Ashton. Thanks for having me, and it was a pleasure to have this chat today. Really cool.